we're talking about the ability to two-putt or less is most dependent on the distance you strike the first ball. And the reason for that is if, let's say, you hit a ball dead on line to the pin, but it's 5 feet short. Now you're still faced with a 5-footer. But if you hit that ball 2 feet to the right of the pin, you're only 2 feet away and your percentages get much greater, even though you missed the exact line. And I hear it so many times, well, it breaks this much or that much, and I keep trying to tell them when I play with members that you need to be thinking about distance. It's much more important, especially as you get farther and farther away from the hole. Because once you do that, it's so critical. Now, in exploring the reasons why this is so difficult, I have to believe, just like a full golf swing, that the number one issue that I see happening is we get focused on the ball, not the target. And that's an interesting concept in itself, because the minute people take a practice swing, the swing looks great, but the minute there's a ball in front, all of a sudden it looks like nothing like the practice swing. Well, it's not different in putting either. For instance, if I'm looking at that target and I see it, everything's great, I see, yeah, I got to play it 1 inch to the left or whatever. Now, most people get over here, now they're so intent about the stroke, the mechanics of the stroke, they forget all about the target. And that's where I think the biggest problems begin. Because they might hit the first putt, and all of a sudden they hit it, and it goes 10 feet. It's a curse, they keep going in. They go 10 feet by on an 8-foot putt, something's wrong there. Now, they didn't necessarily hit it on a heartbeat. So the problem that they have is they're not focused at all about where. They're focused about how. And I think as teachers, we tend to bring too much of that out, because we get you thinking about the mechanics of a swing and not where the ball is supposed to go. And this is a critical thing, and putting brings it out probably more than anything else. So, to combat that, I have found a couple of drills that work extremely well. Probably the most critical drill, and when I was on the Champions Tour with David Graham and Bruce Fleischer, I had them do this drill all the time, and it worked like a charm. Fleischer got so good on these that we would laugh about how good his approach putting got. Wasn't thinking about making it, thinking about hitting the ball the right distance, so the next putt was a tap-in. So, here's the drill. If I look at a target, let's say I'm going to look at this target over here, I get myself set up so where I line the club up, I do everything the way I normally would, I take one last look at the ball, and then I look at the target. While I'm looking at the target, I strike the ball. Now, what's interesting about that is now you have a starting point to understand what it is you need to do. Now that ball's what, about a foot short. So clearly, I'm not feeling what I'm seeing. And to be a good putter, you have to meld your sense of sight and your sense of touch. Your eyes see, and your mind conceives, and your hands have to feel what's going on here. Because without sensitivity in your hands, which is the only contact you have with the club, to feel what you're seeing, there's going to be problems. If you'd have hit this putt, or if I'd have hit this putt 10 feet short, I'm really way off. I'm seeing something and not feeling the same thing. So this is a great drill to practice when you're trying to improve your putting. When I go to a golf course and I have to play, and it's not a course I've played before, the first thing I do when I get there is I go to a putting green and I drop a few balls down and I do this drill. Because every golf course is different, and up till this year we had a green over here, this particular putting green, and these greens were much slower than the greens over there. It would drive people crazy to go from that golf course to this golf course because there was such a wide discrepancy about the green speeds. Now George cuts the greens almost identical height, They're very, very similar in their speed, so you don't have the issue anymore. But when you go to a golf course, or when you start out for the day, even our greens, as close as we keep the tolerances, run slower or faster. The weather has a lot to do with that. If we get a cold snap, George has to grow them a little taller to protect the greens, so that, let's face it, we don't want to have bad greens in terms of bare ground or whatever. So they're constantly having to watch the heights that they mow and how much tolerance those greens have, which makes them change on a daily basis. When we get a lot of wind, such as we have today, the greens will get faster almost every time because they dry out. And when they dry out, they do get faster. After a rain, the opposite. So once I start off doing this drill, then I go to a different cup. And once you've done this for a few minutes, you start to have a feel for the distance. Like many times, I'll have someone come up and I'll say, okay, line yourself up. Let's say we're going to go to that pin over there. Line yourself up, get yourself ready, and then what I do is I stand right in front of them. How far is it? Well, I know they don't know. 30 feet. And then I pace it off at 15 feet. Or 45 feet, and they were thinking 25 feet. It isn't though that they need the number in their head. What they need is the feel for the distance. But if you're thinking 25 feet and you're 45 feet, you're going to have an issue because you're not relating to the true distance that you have here. So, again, take a different cup. Let's go to this one over here. I get myself all lined up. I'm ready to go. Take one last look at the ball, then I'm looking at the target. And while I'm looking at the target, I try to hit the ball and see if I can strike it the right distance. You notice I'm pretty good at this. And the only reason I'm pretty good at this is I spend about 30 to 45 minutes a day working on these things. When you come out here at night, you'll always see me over here on the putting green and the chipping green. That's what I'm doing. I spend a lot of time trying to gain a feel for distance.